is old business rezoning 2102, Oak Knolls 55. Mr. Bickley, could you please give us the department's views?
Yes, sir. This project has been in the works for some time, and it last came before you 2 months ago. The applicants were requesting a development that would consist of some duplexes and triplexes that would be marketed to a 55 and older community. At that hearing, the planning board did vote unanimously to deny the petition for rezoning. And then the next month, which would have been the start of June, at the commission hearing, the county commission did vote to send this case back to the planning board so that the applicant could revise their design and re-present it to you. What the applicant has presented to us is now showing 31 single-family homes along a private street that would be gated at the north and the south, and the associated stormwater infrastructure and street infrastructure would be provided. Staff is recommending approval of this request, and two of the particular requests they have made are in regard to setbacks. The applicant has requested that these houses be allowed to be 10 feet between two residences rather than the 12 feet that the R1 zoning district requires. They have requested that these homes be 20 feet from the street rather than the 25 feet front setback that the code requires. And they have also requested to strike any language from their PAD request that limits the height of their buildings to 1 story so that they can be regulated as in the R1 zoning district that they are already held to as part of their PAD zoning. So staff is recommending approval of what the applicants have resubmitted. We have added recommendations and conditions as well as part of that report that you have in front of you.
Binkley, with the owner, the owner's representative, with the applicant, please come forward. Identify yourself by name, address, and that you've been sworn, and then tell us what you need to do.
Now, this is Jason Murray. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
Okay. Address is P.O. Box 2965, Springfield, Missouri 65801, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. What would you like for us to do after Mr. Binkley's description?
Well, after the May planning meeting, we received a lot of feedback, during the meeting, and then also from talking to other neighbors, after the meeting, and we could tell, the duplexes and triplexes were not the best idea for the neighborhood, and so we decided the best way to move forward is to go back and figure out what under the existing zoning, was allowed, and go back and design something that already fit into the existing zoning. And so that's what we did, and we came up with the new plan of the 31 houses plus a clubhouse. The existing zoning actually allows up to 32 houses, but they just, they don't really fit for the size of the houses we want to build. And so the only thing that we're asking for, so really we don't have to even come before the board because we're already within the existing zoning. But we want to get along with the neighborhood. We want to try to keep the houses as far away from the neighbors as possible. And so we're thinking if the houses could be a little closer to our streets, because we just have one street that comes up the middle of our land, we could be a little closer to our street to give more room at the rear to keep them as far away from any of the neighbors. And then also they can be that 1 or 2 foot wider. That way we can get the same square footage with a little bit, with a plan that's not quite as deep. So again, that helps us stay as far away from the neighboring properties around the perimeter of the land. So at this point, we're really just asking for a slight variance in the setbacks that are within our development. We're not asking for any changes to the rear setbacks. Those are under R1, which is what our land is zoned now, the same as the surrounding neighborhood. It's R1, which requires a 25-foot rear setback. So we're just asking, we don't want any change to that. We just want to be able to move them a little closer to our street that goes down the middle of the property. And then the side setbacks right now under R1 are 6 foot, and we want to make them 5 foot, which would make 10 foot between the houses minimum versus 12. you can see on the plan that Mr. Binkley's put up on the screen here, the way our road curves through here, some of the houses sit in there at a slight angle. So you can see maybe the 10 foot or 12 foot is just one little corner of the house. And we had the architect draw this plan, with the 12 feet. So this is 12 feet between them. So this plan fits there right now under the existing zoning. We just want to, make them a little closer to the road, and then be able to go 10 feet between instead of 12, and that way we can make them a little bit wider, a little farther from the neighboring properties around the perimeter. That'll also allow us to make them, we want to have all, 2-car garages, because everybody has 2 cars, they have 1 car, and other things they store in the garage. And so a house that's all garage in the front doesn't look as nice as one that's a little wider, as the 2-car garage, plus house attached to it. So I guess those are my main points. Let me look over my notes here.
Sure.
And the changes that we're asking for, if you live in one of these surrounding properties, you're never going to know. You can't even really see into the subdivision. The people that would know how close they are to our road on the inside would only be the people that are inside our gated development. So it really has no effect on the neighbors. And we're trying to, after going through the whole process, I think it's helped us, just going through the process and getting the neighborhood feedback and looking at the project again and again, it's helped us come up with an overall better design, to have the individual residences instead of duplexes and triplexes. I think anybody given the choice would rather, live in an individual house versus a duplex or triplex, especially now in the age of coronavirus. But this just gives everybody more privacy, reduces the number of units from our original request, which was for the duplexes and triplexes. We think it'll fit in with the neighborhood much better. And I guess one thing would be our original plan, the engineer put in about 1 story, and our plan is 1 story, but some of them may have a little bonus room over the garage, or there may be one we want to make 2-story, but that's all just normal part of the existing R1 zoning. And notice that was in that original amendment, of this case, and we just want to take that out of there. We didn't want to add further restrictions to our property.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Have you had an opportunity to see what conditions the staff had recommended?
I have. Yeah, I have that report here in front of me.
And are you agreeable?
Well, are you talking about under the staff analysis?
Yes, sir. Mr. Binkley, can you put a copy of that up, or is that?
I can, yeah. So we're talking about staff recommendations, Jason, at the very end of the report.
Okay. I'm on that page now. That leaves existing requirements in place, based off of the previous PADs and existing zoning. So that's certainly fine. Regulated as R1, which is how it is now, with the same height restrictions, same minimum setbacks, except for these variances we're asking for on the sides and the front, but we're not asking for any change to the rear. Entrances on Crichton and Kingsbury meet the highway department standards, definitely. That's no problem. It all looks standard to me.
You're agreeable?
Yes.
Thank you. Those conditions are part of the staff's recommendation. Anyone else on the board have any questions for Mr. Jason Murray?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of Mr. Murray.
Yes.
Just to verify, we're still talking 55 plus, is that correct?
We are, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions as well.
Yes.
Mr. Murray, the main purpose for the change in the setbacks, is that to allow the houses just to be larger, so they'll be a nicer home?
Not necessarily a whole bunch larger, but they just need to be wider. That way they don't have to be as deep, you know, because we want to build these things between 1,500 and 1,800 square foot. You know, everybody, you know, we don't want to make them gigantic, but they need to be, you know, at least 1,500 square feet, 3-car garage, and then, you know, quite a few of them will be even larger. But the house is going to look a lot nicer if it's wider in the front versus one that's more of a rectangle.
Right.
You get more windows in the front, more windows in the back, and the way our road curves through the subdivision, you know, a lot of those houses sit at an angle, so maybe the back corner is butting up close to another house, but the whole house isn't sitting on top of the next one. That just makes it's going to make it look nicer inside the subdivision.
And my second question: are these for sale or are these for rent?
And these are for rent.
Thank you. That's all.
Anyone else have a question for Mr. Murray on the board, please?
Mr. Murray, you don't by chance have any renditions of what these are going to look like, do you?
Well, we haven't done any of those yet, because it depends on how, you know, the side setbacks, especially because, you know, if there's 12 feet between them, the houses have to be a little bit narrower.
Sure.
If they're 10 feet, and so we can't really move to that step till we know what our limitations are.
Thank you.
But I can tell you, you know, Mike Dobbs is my partner in this project, and he's been building some of the nicest homes in Springfield for at least 30 years, maybe 40 years, he said. You know, anybody that's familiar with his work can definitely attest to that. So we're trying to make these, you know, top notch and something you'd be proud to have near your neighborhood, not something that would be an eyesore. So these are going to be, you know, high-end, nice homes. And it'll be expensive too.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Anyone else from the board have any questions for Mr. Murray? Hearing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Excuse, would the next person wishing to speak in favor of plan board case number 2102, Oak Knolls 55, please come forward.
No, it's east. Southeast.
I don't see anybody, Mr. Chairman.
We have anybody else, Mr. Binkley, in favor of?
No, I believe Mr. Murray is the only one in favor on the applicant side.
Thank you. Hearing none, now is the opportunity. Anyone wish to come forward and speak in opposition? 2102, Oak Knolls 55, now's the time.
Yes, Marcia Steele. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
First of all, of note, I'd like you to note that I'm in the home of Doug and Susan McNeil, if that came across for their sign-on. My name is Marcia Steele, and I live at 1647 South Woodbury, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you, Ms. Steele.
You're welcome. Well, good evening. My family's property directly adjoins the east side of the area being discussed in the proposal tonight. I believe I speak for my neighbors when I say we are appreciative that your board previously voted 8-0 to provide continued support of a comparable R1 housing development directly behind my home. Our properties here were built and or purchased with developer covenant restrictions originally that have protected our property values over time. For my family, that's 34 years. The proposal being brought to your vote this evening is not comparable. According to a representative that my family contacted this last week with Murney and Associates, the homes proposed to you this evening are approximately 50 to 70% smaller in comparison with the average homes in the adjoining areas. Bear with me as I discuss a little bit of the residential thought processes, but although we've been pushed as a quiet residential area to accept the city of Springfield's growing commercial district east of 65, which I think we can all acknowledge has morphed from trees and open lands to car sales companies, commercial strip malls, all the way to Sam's Wholesale and a Walmart neighborhood market. We had previously managed to at least maintain a residential divider at the Greene County line close to Blackman Road. However, in recent years, the push in our area for commercial property has continued to overtake us into the Greene County area with the addition of Getaway Golf, a 55-plus care facility that grew from what our neighborhood expected to be 2 stories into a 4.5-story building, a 3-story multiply credit union, and the O'Reilly Ranson development, which happens now to be in view of my back deck. In 2017, at the time the O'Reilly development occurred, which directly adjoins, as we know, the south side of tonight's proposed property, a very intense discussion ensued with the result that a disgruntled group of our subdivision homeowners were assured by planning and zoning that we would be protected with no more than 19 comparable homes, originally known as Beacon Hill Estates, that would sustain or even perhaps increase our property values in combination with the approval of the O'Reilly's commercial property. Now we are at this meeting tonight with new developer partnership involved in the R1 property discussed. Their new proposal, which was brought to the board on May 19th of this year in case P17-000467, was far different than comparable to our existing homes. And that proposal included 55-plus leased multifamily dwellings in the form of triplexes and duplexes, which was opposed by 65 of our neighbors and unanimously rejected by your board. Now we believe we are being asked to review another unacceptable proposal disguised as a new plan, 31 to 32 units of to be leased, not owned, crammed together with a potential for only 10 feet between them in some areas. We feel that this is nothing new. It's just a separation of the houses and just as unacceptable as the previous proposal. Still not what we were led to believe would be comparable homes. Last Thursday, a letter was presented to your committee, which we hope you have thoroughly reviewed, signed by 60 members of our community opposing the proposal for this evening. There also appears to be multiple miscommunications from the developers, including a lack of information to the homeowners regarding all kinds of fluctuating ideas about the leased homes they're wanting to build, very abstract concepts for water detention, civil engineering obstacles, storm sewer runoff, as well as a lack of concern for our increased traffic flows. There are no trees or gates that cover up the fact that tonight's discussion is not a comparable housing proposal for our well-established community where the residents have invested their hard-earned money and we wish to protect our investment. I'm asking the committee tonight to continue to support existing residents and vote against tonight's building proposal that appears to be more about maximizing leased housing rather than providing market and visually comparable housing. We have already been pushed to accept an ever-encroaching change in our quiet environment, and we are asking you to stand together against this proposal. In reality, we feel that you've already made this decision once, and we are asking you to be consistent in protecting our current residents again. We thank you very much for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Steele. Any members of the board have any questions for Ms. Steele? See no one. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to come forward to speak in opposition? Plan board case number 2102, Oak Knolls 55. Now's the time.
Hello.
You're on.
It's me? Nope, it's Tanya. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Who are you?
I'm so excited. I didn't know how to patch in. Hi. My name's Tanya Degner. I'm at 4072 East Linwood Street, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you.
My property backs up directly to the back of Mr. Murray and Mr. Dobbs' property that they're wanting to develop. I cannot put it in such eloquent words as the speaker prior to me said. All I can say is that I'm a single mom of 3 kids that has worked 2 jobs at some times in the last 12 years to afford a home in this neighborhood. And I am not excited about a rental property in my backyard that I can literally almost touch from my back fence line. I know that we are all very tired of having to month after month pound the pavements to get signatures and to call and email. And I'm sure that you guys at some point get a little tired of us as well. But I just implore you and beg you to really take in mind the hard work that the families in this community do to provide their families good homes in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Come forward, speak in opposition. Planning Board Case 2102, Oak Knolls 55.
Ms. Hudson.
Evening. My name is Juliana Hudson. I reside at 1667 South Woodbury Avenue. I have been sworn in. We want to echo Tanya and Marcia. Our concerns are for, I don't feel like this is enough of a reduction in the number of homes. I still am very concerned about the traffic flow. My parents are in the age range that would fall into living in this, and I can guarantee you they drive the wheels off their car, both of their cars, because they are busy people. It only leads off of Forest Heights. I've paid attention the last 6 weeks that we've been out and about more. When I turn onto Forest Heights and how busy that street is, and where our homes are, we back up to the east side of the property in question. You can't walk in our neighborhood without walking down Forest Heights at some point, and you're taking your life into your own hands at some points in the day trying to go on a walk. Adding 31 more homes, that'll just increase that more. I am also concerned about the stormwater drainage, especially since my next door neighbors, Dr. and Mrs. McNeil, received a letter in their mailbox from the Department of Natural Resources regarding flooding in our area and pollution to Pearson Creek due to the Turner's Rock development just down the way, and I can only see that another development right behind our homes would increase that. And I again ask you to please stand together with our neighborhood again and protect us from, as has been said, encroaching commercial development and things that keep our homes. Like Tanya said, we work hard to live here. So I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. Anyone have any questions, Ms. Hudson, from the board? Thank you. Hearing no one, I ask anyone else wish to speak in opposition. 2102, Oak Knolls 55.
Yes, I'm Kent Steele.
Yes, Mr. McNeil.
No, Kent Steele. I'm at Dr. McNeil's and Susan's home as well.
Okay.
My name is Kent Steele, and I live at 1647 South Woodbury and have been sworn in. First of all, I support all the comments my wife, Marcia Steele, has presented this evening. I have an additional insight regarding this property, as I'm a general contractor and have been building for 36 years. When I assess the land behind my home, I have great concerns with regard to elevations of infrastructure, topographics, and the aesthetics of the ground related to the proposed homes and how this will affect the elevations of the existing homes. The developers have exhibited changed plans and vacillating ideas. My initial casual conversation with Mike Dobbs did not remotely resemble either plan which has been presented to the committee. It was in actuality a drastic contrast. For me, this has created a lack of confidence and vision in his potential follow-through. I have the advantage that I've observed this land for 34 years. The land that we are discussing this evening is frequently flooded in heavy rains, and it is my understanding that there have been homes with water issues from the runoff in the past. No civil engineering drawing has been provided to support these 31 homes, and I'm concerned for my neighbors down the street to the south that they'll be asked for an easement for the storm sewer runoff, which could adversely affect the property values and the existing trees and landscaping. In addition, Any water detention has a potential to be unsightly and a hazard for insects. In the limited drawing provided, this water detention area appears to be close proximity to 4 houses on Woodbury Avenue and would indirectly affect additional homes. I would ask you guys as a committee members, if you lived on Woodbury Avenue, would you be happy to have 50 to 70% smaller leased houses with the potential of 10 feet apart between the houses built in your backyard? Wouldn't you agree, if you lived where I do, you would also be opposed to this proposal? As a contractor, I strongly believe that this land is in the wrong place for this type of housing and the development that you're reviewing tonight. I'm also very concerned about an increased traffic flow from Sunshine onto Forest Heights. I have multiple neighbors that currently back out of their driveways directly onto Forest Heights.
30 seconds, Mr. Steele.
Yes, sir. Okay. There's also a school bus stop at the corner of Stanford and Forest Heights. The main thoroughfare is narrow and has no storm sewer curb and already supports 4 major subdivisions: Oak Nose, 5th Edition, Chapel Hill, and Crichton Place. This added traffic of 31 additional homes would create catastrophic situations on this road. I strongly encourage you to vote no on this proposal. There are far too many liabilities in this plan.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Turn it over to the next person who wishes to speak in opposition. The Oak Mills 55 property, 2102. Any more hands? There's a hand, I think. Seems like the McNeil household has several hands.
Yeah, we're having a party here tonight.
Okay, all right.
But I am Susan McNeil, 1677 South Woodbury. I would like to speak to one of my biggest concerns, which is the issue of access and traffic. It was established at the May 19th Planning and Zoning meeting that this development would add 400 plus more cars in and out each day, and that Kingsbury Avenue and Crichton Place are the streets the plan shows as the access streets. My question to the board is, why? Why does my quiet residential neighborhood have to be turned into a busy, traffic-laden throughway in order to accommodate these developers? Why not request that Mr. Dobbs and Mr. Murray create 2 much more sensible roads in and out of their development by connecting their housing units directly to Sunshine Street? These new access roads could be located on the east and west sides of the Ranson O'Reilly office building. After all, the Ranson O'Reilly Office Park is a business which already sits on a busy thoroughfare, so additional cars shouldn't matter to them. And let us not forget that Mr. Ranson and Mr. O'Reilly's structure actually sits on the south end of the original parcel of land that we are talking about tonight. The traffic coming and going will not ruin Mr. Ranson and Mr. O'Reilly's business, but it will ruin our residential neighborhood. Please require the developers to change the access streets. And finally, as one incredulous neighbor said to me, so they will be driving through our neighborhood numerous times each day, but their neighborhood is a private gated area that we are not allowed in? Really? Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. McNeil. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Plan Board Case 2102. Now's the time.
Mr. Brandon Goodwin.
Mr. Goodwin.
Hey, I'm sorry, this is Brandon Goodwin. I wasn't planning to speak. Did you have a question for me?
I was told that you wanted to speak. If you don't, that's fine.
Oh, no, I have nothing to say.
Thank you,
It
sir.
hasn't already been echoed. Thanks.
Okay, I appreciate that. Very nice. Thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak, cover areas perhaps that have not been covered?
Dolores Pohl, 1657 South Woodbury Avenue.
Is this yet another member of the McNeil party? Okay, Dolores. Dolores, and your last name is Pohl?
We could not get on at our house. So,
P-O-H-L.
Yes.
No, that's fine. You're welcome. Thank you. Your address again, Ms. Pohl?
1657 South Woodbury.
And I heard that you've been sworn. What would you like to tell us, please?
No, I have not.
Ms. Paul, would you solemnly affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you give us in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I will.
Thank you. You've been sworn now. What would you like to tell us?
First of all, this is from my husband and myself. We want to thank the board for voting to keep the property in question residential, but we still have many concerns about the project. We are a long-time, well-established, single-family neighborhood. We've lived here since 1986 and love our home and neighbors. To now want to add some 30-plus rental lease units to our neighborhood is unreasonable. What happens if the 55-plus community does not fill up? Then will they be allowed to just change it to rentals? We're sorry, but we do not want rental lease units behind our home. We know that the property has changed hands, but when the property was originally sold, we were personally told that we need not worry about the value of our home, that the individual homes that would be built would be in the $350,000 to $400,000 range. We were also told that there would be approximately 19 homes built on the land and that a road would be built linking Kingsbury to Ranch Drive. But since only 19 homes, that wouldn't be necessary. Perhaps this should be done no matter what the outcome to help relieve the additional traffic, especially if and when school starts. Also of concern is the issue of flooding. We have experienced runoff from the property into our backyard during heavy storms, and I imagine others in the area have also experienced this. With the addition of so many units, I can only imagine it being worse. If Mr. Dobbs was part of the original sale of the land, then he should know how the land was intended to be developed, and he should honor that commitment. We now find that developers want to put in rental units. We do not believe that rental units belong smack dab in the middle of our community. I ask each of you, if this was proposed in your backyard, would you be happy with this arrangement? I don't think so. In the builder's letter of June 29th to the board, they stated they have listened to the neighbors' concern. Other than the last board meeting, we have not seen nor heard from the builders. And again, I'm talking for my husband and myself. At least when the property was originally sold, the buyers had the decency to set up meetings with us and to answer our questions. Now, I realize that in the current climate, this is not possible, but some outreach really would have been thoughtful. Another concern is with the current plan that they want to remove the height 1 story, that they do not plan to build 2-story units, but don't want to add additional limitations. I'm concerned that if that is removed, we could be looking at 2 stories plus. With the removal of that condition, it does not sound like it might be a 55 community, but perhaps a younger group, and we're not all able of trekking stairs. If we go back to the individual 19 family homes, that would be in sync with our current homes. We have been lied to since the beginning and what we are being told. I ask you this again, would you want this in your backyard? Please make the right decision and keep the original plan for 19 individually owned family homes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Pohl. We received your statement in an email earlier. Appreciate your coming forth and telling us in person. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Planning Board case number 2102.
Ms. Nell.
Hi, I'm Jessica Nell. I live at 4142 East Kingsbury Street, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you.
Yes. As a real estate agent, I know I said this at the last meeting, but I feel like I have the exact same concerns that everyone's touted and talked about tonight, and that, that we spoke about before. But in addition, I just want to kind of reiterate and add to what Susan McNeil had mentioned. The properties are rental properties. I mean, we can say it's 55 plus gated and it's super luxurious and it's going to be really expensive and there's only going to be a certain kind of person in there, but nobody knows what's going to happen with the economy eventually, and nobody knows if you're actually going to get $4,000 a month rent out of these things or whatever they've got planned. What it means to us is that there are rental properties jammed into the middle of our neighborhood of home-owned properties, well-established neighborhood, and the only way in and out, one way is my street. And I know for a fact that most of the traffic will be on Kingsbury because it's going to be a nightmare on Crichton Place to get out onto Forest Heights there. It'll be backed up all the time. And it already is, during rush hour. I mean, like right now, you don't see it as much just because of the COVID going on. There's not as much traffic. There's not school. That's less in the traffic right now. But when it goes back to normal, it's going to be an insane mess. And it's not going to be easy to deal with. I know that, I guess the thing I want you guys to think about is the fact that the only ways in and out of this rental property unit is through our neighborhood. And I guess that's my main concern.
Thank you, Ms. Nell. Any questions for Ms. Nell from the board? Appreciate it. Thank you for coming forward. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition? Case number 2102. Now's the time.
Mr. McNeil.
From the McNeil household, we have a gentleman. Who are you, sir?
Doug McNeil, 1677 South Woodbury Avenue. I have been sworn in.
Yes, sir.
I have 2 points initially to counter with Mr. Murray. Those of us who collected signatures, which you got the letter that supports all of our concerns, of the 60 that we got signatures for, I'm only aware of one that had a conversation with Mr. Murray. So, as the letter emphasized, that proposal is a one-sided proposal. It does not come with the approval of the surrounding community. We all have the same interest. We want that pasture developed. That's why in 2017, the community, the board, Mr. Dobbs, we all approved Beacon Hill Estates because we were told they'd be larger homes, they'd be larger lots, and that's what we all agreed with. So there's a frustration that, there was a verbal, there was a written commitment, but now they're coming back and they keep pushing and keep pushing. We have the same concerns as far as drainage, as far as sewage, as far as the rental units. But we want the board to know we want this land developed, but we want it to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. I do want to correct one thing. I recently found out that the DNR has closed their investigation as far as the drainage issue, but there still is a drainage issue, and I think Annette sent you some pictures of the problems that are there, and then you have the report from Mr. Wicker. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to come forward, speak in opposition? Planning Board case number 2102. I'm seeing no one, Mr. Binkley. Is that where we are?
We will go through the people who have phoned in because it's hard for us to know exactly what they're here for. So we'll go through and open it up. Anybody who's on the telephone, you want to go ahead and speak at 2102, now's your chance.
Okay, what do you want?
I need to go pee-pee.
We'll go pee-pee.
Excellent timing. Okay, sounds like nobody on the telephone is in opposition to 2102.
Thank you, Mr. Binkley. Now I turn it over to the board for discussion after that insight into someone's home. Thank you very much. Enjoyed that. Board, any thoughts? I'll start off. Everybody's quiet, and I'm never quiet. I tend to agree with the very first speaker My notes say Ms. Steele. She spoke very well, and it seems like many people agreed with her over and over that it's not comparable with the neighborhood. I think Mr. Doug McNeil concluded saying it was not comparable, and in between everybody seemed to agree it's too congested. There's concerns about runoff. Many things line up to say, but then perhaps just as compelling, Mr. McNeil ends up with a list of 60 people that signed and represents to us that perhaps one talked to them. We like to see more community exchange than was represented. So I'm inclined to say, with my vote, such as it is, it's just one, that we leave this PAD where it is.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Scott.
I echo a lot of those same sentiments, and while I can understand the need for development, and I know that our land use plan says that's suitable for urban residential, which would be more dense development. There's a lot of development in that area as it is. One of the things with the Protestant district in our regulations are that number H, reasonable consideration being given to the characteristics of the district and its peculiar suitability. And I think that when you look at that number of homes, it changes that considerably. And what we approved previously, while it wasn't perfect, I think people were much more inclined to do that. So I cannot support this request as it is. And if nobody else has any other comments, I'd move for approval of Planning Board Case 2102.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I need to chime in. I appreciate all the participation, and I do understand their thought process. But to me, the reality is, it's a zoned R1, and if they had not changed anything and just went with straight zone R1, there would have been no discussion. And a property owner certainly has the right to change his mind before he does anything with the property. And so I'm having a hard time limiting the property owner's ability to do with his property how he wishes within our stated guidelines in the R1 district. And from how I understand it, that's other than the setback, the setbacks that they're trying to accommodate the neighborhood with. That's the only difference in their request. So I don't know. Like I say, I have a hard time restricting.
Mr. Godfrey, if you'd let me push back just a little bit. I think what bothers me about this is the whole package deal was presented earlier with the office building and this piece of residential property. And so that, to me, the PAD was approved, the whole thing. And now we're trying to split this apart and run it back as an R1. And I don't think that's fair to those residents, nor, it's kind of a bait and switch thing going on here. And that doesn't set well with me, because those, like Mr. McNeil said, there was an agreement with that original PAD, and those neighbors bought off on that. And here we are changing the rules on those people, and I don't think that's right. Secondly, I was doing some figuring here, and Mr. Murray may want to jump in. He asked for leniency on the distance between the property and the street and the side and all that. But if you take those 31 lots and they don't come out to 10,000 square feet, which is also a requirement of the minimum lot area in residential R1. So he's, unless my calculations are wrong, that may be another thing he may need to, if he's going to, if he's looking for leniency on things. Maybe. Do you have any comment on that, Mr. Murray?
Go ahead, Mr. Murray.
And we've had multiple discussions with the planning board staff, and we can 32 units meet the existing zoning. The streets, since they're private streets, are part of the common area of the development. And so it comes out to 32 units and a fraction, then you round down to get the total number of units.
So are you saying that the lot size includes out to the center line of the private street? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I guess bottom line for me is, as others have said, I don't think I can be supportive of what we got going on here. It seems like the same thing we discussed last month, and so as far as what I want to propose is, I couldn't support this the way it is.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Klingon?
Chairman? Yes, sir. Thank you. I went out and looked at the property, and I was surprised at the topography. I'm shocked how much it falls. I guess it's from the west. It definitely would have some challenges. But it is my understanding, like Brett said, they could go ahead and do what was already talked about because it was already zoned. There's really nothing you can do. I think the people have probably misunderstood that it has to be at 19 because that's what we agreed to. I can't really support this. I don't think it's best use for that property. I don't think you can run it, though. Two things I'll make a point. I don't think you can run the road through the Ranson O'Reilly. I don't think the highway department, that would be a question for Mr. Arkman, but I don't believe they would let them do that. And just for a point of education, rental property, you cannot stop rental property. That's discrimination. You can rent your house if you want to. There's no covenant in the world that can stop you from renting property because of discrimination laws, just so you know that.
Thank you, Ms. Klingon. Anyone else on the board wish to comment further? If not, we've got a motion pending to approve, lacking a second.
Mr. Chairman, I think Kevin kind of set me up, so I guess I will address that.
Here we go.
As far as the access to Sunshine is a MoDOT maintained route. They have jurisdiction over where access is. Sunshine is a limited access route, so they're going to be real restrictive on where they allow a new access. Now, I can't remember what was there before O'Reilly built their office park. I know there was one or two accesses. I know they have one now, I believe. I don't have an aerial. Yeah, I do. They have two. There may have been another one. I don't know, but that would be up to MoDOT. I would guess that MoDOT would not allow another access at all to Sunshine. Now, with that being said, and with what has been discussed tonight, and you guys know the way I feel typically, I believe a property owner ought to do what a property owner wants to do. They own the property. However, in this case, I do feel like, from the beginning, and again, I know I've been told, hey, R1, they can build however many they want in there, typically, of that one size. So I can get 30-something in there already. But I feel like I lent my vote originally to something that was somewhere in the neighborhood of 19 or 20 homes, something like that. And so for me, I look at the drawing that we have been provided in our packets before that essentially outlines the existing lots and around that area, and then what's being proposed, and they're simply not going to be the same size. And so for that, I feel like, well, obviously they can't get the same type of home. And I feel like we didn't sell the neighborhood on this, but I agreed for the original approval because I felt that's what was going in there. And now I feel like it's not, and so I can't support it. But again, I'm just the one vote. That's my take.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Anyone else wish to speak on the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a point of clarification. The PAD is still in existence, so they can only do what the PAD says with the 19 lots, correct?
They've got what it now allows. That's my understanding.
Yeah, just the 19 homes that are in the PAD. Even though it's being regulated as R1, that PAD was approved with a 19 home limit.
We might ask Mr. Biggley.
That is not staff's interpretation. Staff's interpretation is that the PAD was approved as an R1 zoning district, and they had a preliminary plat approved for 19 lots, but a preliminary plat can be changed. A preliminary plat is not binding, and staff is in the belief that this property is, as the conditions of the existing zoning state, shall be regulated as within an R1 district, with the exception that private gated streets without sidewalks may be allowed.
Mr. Biggley, the R1 is what the PAD allows. Is that what you said, Mr. Biggley?
Yep, that's it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had a question for Mr. Pete.
Sure.
So in the original situation with the Ransom building and this property, the original tract of ground was divided up within this PAD. The office building was on one parcel, and then what was left over was put in with the PAD regulated as an R1 district. Did I state that correctly?
Yes, sir. So the original PAD zoning allowed for an office development on the southern portion and an R1 residential development on the northern portion, and then they were platted and subdivided as two large lots, which we still have. And again, the zoning was then amended a few years later to allow private streets and gates, but the allowance for all the rights and privileges that the R1 zoning confers is still in place.
And so during that process, when did the 19 lots appear? Was it after the two large lots were divided up?
It was, yes. They proposed those as part of the preliminary plat, which the board did approve, but they're not necessarily bound by their PAD zoning to do 19 lots. What they're bound to is the conditions of the approval, which state shall be regulated as R1 suburban residence district.
Except in the case of the single story, correct?
Well, no, the original PAD language doesn't say anything about height. It just says shall be regulated as R1. So the height is regulated just as any R1 at 2.5 stories, or I believe 35 feet above ground level.
And I guess that's where I have a hard time voting no on this, is because they do have options within the R1, and if they change their mind, they change their mind. So anyway, that's my thought.
Any further discussion? If not, we've pinned on a motion without a second.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve Plan Board case number 2102, Oak Knoll 55.
I do have a question. Sorry, I was muted when I was trying to ask it.
Oh.
So
we'll pause.
In the staff report, it says the applicant also proposed eliminating the 1-story height restriction that was proposed in the original PAD. So why that would continue, correct?
Sorry, the wording is a little confusing. So the first place that a 1-story height limit was proposed is in this PAD, Planning Board Case 2102. That's the first time a height limit has ever been proposed. And so I guess if you look at staff analysis number 6, it says the original version of PAD Amendment 2102. We're specifically talking about the height amendment or the height restriction that was proposed this time around. There is no height restriction in either PAD 1884 or 1945.
Okay. But we've approved a preliminary plat for 19 homes.
That is correct, although, again, that has expired. But yes, that was approved, I believe, 2017.
So the process would be typically either a change in the PAD, or since the preliminary plat has expired, then they can either extend it, correct?
Correct.
Or they can come back with a new one.
Yes. And in this specific circumstance, as they are proposing a single lot, they would not necessarily need to come back to this board whatsoever, because if they develop the homes that they have proposed on a single lot, they don't need to plat anything else. The single lot is already there and platted.
But can they do a subdivision on a single lot?
Yes.
Without coming back to us?
They can, because their previous PAD allows for private streets. So if you have the ability to put private streets in your development and don't have any need to plat or dedicate a public right-of-way, you already have the access that you need. You can proceed with the homes on the single lot as long as the number of homes and the setbacks and height restrictions do not violate what the R1 zoning currently mandates.
That's where we are.
Okay.
So this is proposed
Mr.
a single
Scott.
lot. And with that being said, then why are we even talking about setbacks if we're looking at this as just one big single lot?
That is because the zoning still requires that even on properties where all the homes are on one single lot, the same setback is maintained. So you look at it on two separate lots as a 6-foot setback from the building to the property line, which is then 12 feet between structures. If you take away that property line, the mandate still remains that the buildings be 12 foot separated. The request here is just to reduce that setback to 10 feet, which is, I believe, the absolute minimum that the fire code would allow. But even if there's no lot lines, even if you're developing homes all on a single lot, the requirement for setbacks is the same as if there were lot lines. It's just the sum of the two setbacks rather than the 6 foot or 5 foot. It's now 10 foot or 12 foot.
So without a new preliminary plat, then how would we know that that was being adhered to in the future?
They have to submit building permits just for the same way any other project would, and our inspectors would go out and measure those setbacks from foundation to foundation.
Mr. Binkley, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
As I mentioned, I just feel like this is a switch, bait and switch deal all along the way. How do we avoid this in the future as a planning board? Because I don't like the way this feels.
That's a good question, and it probably deserves a better response than I can come up with now, but it speaks to the issue that Brett brought up earlier, which is the zoning rules that we have don't necessarily tie a developer to a specific project. If you wanted to get down to the nitty-gritty on every single PAD zoning, you could mandate exactly the number of homes, exactly the size of the homes, exactly the height and the setbacks and every single thing so that nothing else could be done. I don't believe that would hold up in court if you decided to permanently zone a property. That's not a foundation of zoning law. Zoning law allows for a property to be zoned and rezoned, and as long as the planning board approves it, there's endless options for a property owner to change zoning on any given property. So it would be difficult in my mind to try to generate some kind of a rule that permanently zoned a property a certain way without being legally challenged. Really, the only way to mandate that the only way to ensure that a development is developed is to actually have it be built, and then it's quite unlikely after that that something dramatically different would happen.
Any further discussion by the board? Hearing none. The motion's been made and seconded to approve. Camera case number 2102. The yes vote would be to approve. No vote would be to deny. Mr. Artman.
Well, sounds like I don't have a lot of power here from what I'm gathering, but I can't change, so I'm a no.
Mr. Scott.
No.
Mr. Godfrey.
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd.
No.
Commissioner Bench.
Commissioner Bench informed me that he is voting no.
Mr. Webb.
No.
Mr. Klingon.
No.
And the chair also votes no. So we've got planning board case 2102 recommended back to our commission for denial. That meeting, I believe, is August 3rd at 9:30 virtually. Is that right, Mr. Baker?
Yes, it is. And for any interested applicants or members of the public, please give us an email or a call or check our website. We will have a link up for the hearing that will happen on August 3rd on our website on or before August 3rd. So stay in touch. We'll let you know how to access that hearing the same way as you did tonight.
And thanks for your virtual participation. All right, we're next on our docket. Next